Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in through the AHS. After I was able to win my last 3-player game, things are getting really close in the standings. Both I and Erock are on 14 points. MV is a little bit more behind, has 6 points, but if he should manage to win all of the remaining 3 games, there's still a chance that he also can win the group. And now, of course, it will be interesting to see who will get a better position in the last one of the 3-player games that we are taking a look at today. Let's see if I or Erock will be able to score another win, or if maybe MV keeps his chances alive for a great comeback. And now, without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game, I am playing in the first position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that we have quite some theater synergy in the game. We have Marlene Dietrich, Fleming, Chaplin, and the Hollywood in H3. There's also Bach and Anthony Gaudi in H2. We have some lab leaders with Sid Meier and Einstein. There's also Spaceflight Manhattan Project, so that's also a direction that can have a payoff at the end. And then we have Churchill, but no Gandhi for the military. There's also the Red Cross in the game. In H2, we have the Suez Canal, we have James Cook, so there's some colonization payoff. We have the 2 science leaders with Nobel and Newton. We have James Watt, but no railroad. We have also no ocean liner service. Then in H1, we have 2 military action leaders. None of them we have in H2. Nostradamus and Genghis Khan can help with the strength. We have the 2 lab and printing press leaders with Leonardo da Vinci and Gutenberg, and Eleanor is a nice transitional leader. We have Himeji Castle, but no Great Wall. We have both of the Happy Face solution wonders with Forbidden City and St. Peter's Basilica. And then there's the Silk Road, but no Universitas. I'm in first position. I think it's a relatively clear choice here. Hammurabi is just too strong, and I will take him here. And then at the next turn, I should be able to maybe either take the library for 2 civil actions, or the engineering genius. One of those cards is guaranteed to be available for me for 2 civil actions. Maybe I could also, of course, get the Acropolis for 1 if it isn't taken. But yeah, that I think would be a fine continuation. Erock will take the Acropolis, takes that wonder together with Ashoka. And we will just go for the library, so doesn't want to have that wonder, doesn't want me to have that wonder available. I think the only other wonder that could be revealed, there could actually be the pyramids be revealed, but the pyramids aren't revealed, instead only the Colosseum. And this turn again was quite clear for me. I will elect Hammurabi, build a mine, increase my population, and take the engineering genius, so that I then at the next turn can decide whether I want to commit to the Colosseum, or whether I maybe want to go for an H1 wonder directly. There's the chance that maybe an H1 wonder could even be already on the row at the next turn. I draw a colonization card. Erock goes for Ashoka, builds a mine, and then I'm not sure if I agree with his choice. He goes for both urban growth and the stockpile. And of course, if he wants to use the urban growth in the next turn, then he has already no yellow card in hand again with Ashoka, so that's why you with Ashoka want to have the stockpile. But I think I might have just skipped the urban growth here and just increased my population, keeping the stockpile as a yellow card for Ashoka, and then being 1 civil action ahead, because in order to activate his ability and then afterwards spend all of the food and resources, you need a lot of civil actions, and spending now civil actions just for a single resource, I'm not sure if that is a good decision here, but he has now already some yellow cards in hand. MV goes for Boudica, has Boudica and Library as a start, which is definitely quite fine. He builds the mine and increases his population. The Colosseum actually got discarded. Maybe that was actually the reason for Erock taking both of those cards. I still don't think I agree with this decision. I am often, anyway, perfectly fine with skipping the HA wonder. I'm not even certain if I would have gone for the Colosseum. Maybe. I mean, he takes an option away from me, but we will see that now after MV's turn, the first one of the H1 wonders is already revealed. The Himeji Castle, and with that I was not too unhappy about the Colosseum being skipped. Maybe it makes it that I can't use my civil actions as efficiently. Now I could have, for example, taken the Colosseum for 1, maybe used the engineering genius already. So there are maybe some downsides, but maybe I would have skipped the Colosseum anyway. So if that was the reason for Erock taking those 2 cards, I think I wouldn't do it. I'm perfectly fine with just going for an H1 wonder directly. I this turn built the second lab, getting some science production going. I then take the irrigation, fine to have that card in hand. There's no Ocean Liner service, no Machu Picchu, so some synergies aren't there, at least the Statue of Liberty, but just having that card in hand and maybe having the option to go for some upgrades in case I don't get Iron or Alchemy is still not bad. And with the remaining civil actions, I actually just took the Engineering Genius. With both of the Engineering Genius, I am able to actually build the Himeji Castle relatively cheaply. Maybe it's not the ideal wonder to get early, but I have grown on that wonder, and with those 2 yellow cards, it's really quite an affordable price, and maybe it helps me to defend myself in case I get into a little bit of military trouble with Hammurabi. And I kind of liked that more to just invest 3 civil actions into that 1 card compared to, for example, taking rich land and then either increasing my population going early into consumption or taking yet another card and then even having a full hand. I draw a card, another colonization card, definitely useful so that I'm able to defend myself. Irok builds the second lab with the urban growth, takes the masonry and starts producing a little bit of additional resources with Ashoka. MV seeds and opens the development of markets. When he then also takes the resource from Boudica, he can actually finish the library already this turn. Then takes the left copy of the rich land, which I think is an important choice, because when I saw, in addition to the Himeji Castle, the Silk Road coming down the row, and when I saw that the development of markets are revealed, then during MV's turn I actually thought about, oh, if I take the resource from development of markets, I can even just take the Himeji Castle, finish it, and afterwards I still have enough civil actions left to take the Silk Road. That, however, is only true if the Silk Road would also be on the 1 civil action area. So with MV taking the left copy of the rich land, he is taking the option away from me to go for both Himeji Castle and the Silk Road, which I think I would have really liked to do. Additionally, he also lets the iron stay on 3, so I think here it really makes sense for him to take the left copy of the rich land. Now it's my card, I can't use my turn, I can't use my politics phase, and now I have a decision on which wonder I want to go for. I start by increasing my population, because if I don't do that, I will have corruption issues, I have now taken the food from the development of markets, and that's already a hint on which wonder I will go for. First, I thought, well, I will still just go for the Himeji Castle. That wonder works well with my 2 engineering geniuses. It maybe protects me a little bit better with me being potentially vulnerable with Hammurabi, even though at least I have already those 2 defense cards drawn, which is nice, but there's Jan Shishka coming down the row, who I won't take without having a tactic, so there could be some potential military pressure. But while I have grown in the Himeji Castle, and while it certainly could be useful wonder, I do think in this very early stage of the game, the economical benefits are just even more important. And with that, and you know how much I like the Silk Road, I at the end decided to just go for the Silk Road and not go for the Himeji Castle here. Which doesn't work that nicely with the Engineering Genius 1, but maybe I can go for an additional wonder even afterwards. But yeah, I at the end went for my more economical style instead of going for the Himeji Castle. I think both wonders could be a perfectly fine choice here, but this early in the game I liked at the end the economical benefits of the Silk Road more. And with going for the Silk Road, I took the food from the development of markets, because if I would have taken resources, I only would have had enough food to increase my population once, and then with the Silk Road not really allowing to use a lot of resources and get out of corruption. I would have had some corruption issues. If I would have gone for the Himeji Castle, I probably would have just taken the resources and maybe even just finished the Himeji Castle immediately. But now I take food from the development of markets, allowing myself to increase my population twice, and with that getting out of corruption. With my last civil action, I then used the Engineering Genius A on the first step of the Silk Road. I could have also waited with using that, but there's maybe a chance that, oh no, the masonry is already taken away, but it opens up the possibility to use the Engineering Genius 1 on the last step for 2 resources. Not ideal, but in some scenarios it can still be useful to maybe get some civil actions out of the way. Maybe I don't need that, because I can just finish the Silk Road at the next turn, and I thought that might be a nice thing to do. But we will see at the next turn that it opens up some alternative possibilities now, not having spent 2 actual resources and still being able to use both Engineering Genius on that wonder very nicely. I could have also taken a yellow card, but I wanted to be able to finish the Silk Road at the next turn while still taking a card. There are a lot of interesting cards coming down the row, and so I rather wanted to be one civil action ahead here already. I draw yet another colonization card, so I get a lot of those, and of course those are helpful to defend myself, even though at the moment I can't keep all of 3 of them in hand anyway. It's Irok's turn, he seeds, the development of trade routes are revealed, he will this turn increase his population twice, builds a warrior, builds a step of the Acropolis that allows him to get out of corruption. He could have finished the Acropolis to get out of corruption, but instead he rather wants to take Leonardo. There's a copy of Alchemy coming down the row, maybe he has a chance to get it at the next turn, if not he has to wait for the other one, but waiting is maybe fine, as he has a very strong leader at the moment with Ashoka giving him both a resource and a food production, so it's maybe fine to having to build a warrior in order to get out of corruption, in order to secure getting Leonardo, and at least he also makes it that MV now can't take something of his choice from Boudica, has to use the additional resources for the military. He also reveals the Legion tactic. MV kinda has to build a warrior unless he goes for the knights, but that is something that he isn't willing to do so, as there are some good alternatives for him. He goes for the iron, goes for 1 upgrade, and could have even gone for a 2nd upgrade with the rich land, interestingly, so he decides to increase his population. With that also goes earlier into consumption. Of course, he is prepared now for development of religion or warfare, but an interesting choice here to not get that upgrade going immediately. I definitely will take the Code of Laws during my turn. With having the Silk Road, getting more civil actions is just extremely strong, but then it was the question whether I, now with my remaining 4 civil actions that I have thanks to Hammurabi, will just finish the Silk Road and get that going, which was my first instinct, or whether I maybe want to go for 2 alchemy upgrades, which also gets me out of corruption, which gives me even 1 more science income, but at the cost of not being able to develop the Code of Laws already this turn. First I thought I just want to finish the Silk Road, but the problem is there's already the 2nd copy of Iron coming down the road, the 1st copy of Alchemy would be gone, so it could be that for quite a while I don't have that much to upgrade. Of course I have the irrigation in hand, but ideally I rather want to upgrade one of my mines or labs first, as at least in this particular case. And also there's of course a bit of a denial factor, because the Alchemy of course is a card that Irok really wants to have. He has a lot of things to do. He can maybe keep Ashoka for a little bit longer. If I now take the Alchemy, it's maybe not too bad. He can then go for the Iron. He can do some useful stuff. But nonetheless, he would have now an opportunity to get the Alchemy for cheap. It could still maybe be even stronger for him to go for the Alchemy together with Leonardo compared to going for the Iron. And now it's also not clear. Maybe the 2nd copy of Alchemy could be taken away by MV. Maybe Irok has to pay additional civil actions for the Alchemy later on. So I do think it makes things maybe a little bit more awkward for him. And with that, and with it also making it that I have something to upgrade, I will go for the Alchemy now. And thanks to having used the Engineering Genius A on the first step, instead of building it normally, I can now go for 2 upgrades, and I can finish the Silk Road at the next turn, but only if I'm willing to use the Engineering Genius 1 for 2 resources, which I think could be fine, but there's maybe also the chance that even more resources are revealed, even though there's actually only the development of crafts left in the deck for additional resources. I skipped the Knights here, also of course an important card, but I really want to get out of corruption, of course. For that I need to spend 4 civil actions, basically. Either with finishing the Silk Road or going for those 2 upgrades, and then I think the Code of Laws is just even more important here than the Knights, especially with me having no Knights tactic, with the only tactic being revealed being a Legion tactic. I sadly have to discard a colonization card. I draw the Knowledge of the Ancients. Probably I won't put that into the deck, with me having now some fine science income, with me having an H1 wonder. Irok Seeds, the development of civil life is revealed, which he uses to increase his population. He then goes for an Iron upgrade, builds a warrior to go up to 5 strength, and then goes for another Iron upgrade. He wouldn't have needed to build a warrior to get out of corruption, so maybe he wants to again make it that MB has to use Boudica's resources, and there's of course also a chance that the event deck could already flip before his next turn. MV goes for an Iron upgrade using the rich land, takes the Forbidden City, builds a warrior, takes the breakthrough, which I think is a very useful card for him, and at the next turn he has enough resources to just finish the Forbidden City if he wants to. And yeah, but again, he might have to build yet another warrior, at least with the ignored unhappy workers from the Forbidden City, he would be able to do that. I start my turn by taking the Swordsman, because Irok is now at 5 strength. He will finish the Acropolis. I have those 2 defense cards, but there's maybe a chance that he will try an aggression. I will actually not go for Swordsman, something that I thought about, that I maybe want to do it, either building a Warrior or Swordsman, and then at least not having to discard both defense cards, so that if Irok should do the decision of trying an aggression against me, that I'm not too vulnerable afterwards. But I, at the end, didn't want to delay the Code of Laws. I didn't want to delay finishing the Silk Road. I think that would be quite some big sacrifices here, just to make it that I am a bit safer in the potential scenario of Irok trying an aggression. For that, he would need to have an aggression, and he would need to do the decision of actually trying the aggression. So I didn't want to play around that particular case too much, and just wanted to get the Code of Laws going and finish the Silk Road, but nonetheless I wanted to secure myself a copy of Swordsman so that I am able to go for a reasonable amount of strength, maybe at some point copying the Legion tactic. But then, as said, I will go for the Code of Laws and finish the Silk Road. I think it's fine to use the Engineering Genius here. Of course, there are some other wonders, but from H1 there's only St. Peter's Basilica left, and the H2 wonders maybe aren't the strongest. I don't know if I can go for the Suez Canal. I have already some good science income, so at the moment there's not a wonder that I would pick without hesitation, so I think it's fine to just use the Engineering Genius, and without it, of course, I can't finish the Silk Road, so it just allows me also to gain an additional science income. I discard the Knowledge of the Ancients and draw a Naval Trade Agreement. Irok seeds and opens the development of craft, so even more resources are revealed. He will finish the Acropolis, takes the Swordsman interestingly for 2 civil actions, but it of course makes sense with the Legion tactic, and then he upgrades his last iron mine. MV seeds and opens the development of science. He will take Gutenberg this turn, elects Gutenberg, takes the printing press with him, so it looks like he wants to go into printing presses, which works in the sense that he soon has 2 ignored unhappy workers from the Forbidden City, so that might allow him to have the free population to put into printing press. Also, he didn't commit to a second lab yet, and there are some printing press leaders in the game with Anthony Gaudi, Darwin, Fleming plus the Hollywood in H3, so it might be a very fine printing press game. He needs a new leader, and Boudica at the moment is just giving him all the time 2 additional resources for the military. Now that the swordsmen are taken away from Irok, he really doesn't have a very efficient way of again using them at the next turn, so it's maybe fine that he wants to replace Boudica ASAP, and then I think Gutenberg is a fine choice, even though it's of course a bit of a commitment going to those printing presses and going for that kind of setup, but it might definitely pay off in that kind of scenario, and also with having the Forbidden City. He will again build another warrior, so has now at least quite a bunch of them. He then increases his population, upgrades his last mine, and builds the step of the Forbidden City. Now it's my turn. I try offering the Naval Trade Agreement to MV. As you can see, I actually went for giving myself an additional colonization force, because I have those 2 colonization cards in hand. There's a Suez Canal in the game. Maybe if my opponent, one of them has maybe committed to a colony, it could be not bad to win it, but MV rejects it, and it could also already be seen as a hint that maybe he himself could have maybe put a colony in there, or maybe he just generally doesn't have a big use out of those blue tokens at the moment. As you can see, I this turn will go for Joan of Arc. Maybe not the ideal leader, with me at the moment not having any religion. But I this turn have the opportunity to still get my civil action back, and I'm on 2 military actions. I could of course go for monarchy. It's something that I think I considered going for monarchy now, maybe waiting for Nostradamus and using him as a leader. But I don't know when I have a good opportunity of taking him. Joan of Arc helps me immediately in making myself a bit safer, and thanks to her giving me an additional military action, which in this situation is still quite useful, so I think she is somewhat useful here, despite not giving me any additional strength. And that additional military action, I think, allows me to skip the monarchy here, which, with my big science income and with maybe and with having the Silk Road, I think it's just quite strong to aim towards a setup with a lot of civil actions. I think it's generally strong if you can achieve it, but with the Silk Road it's even more strong. And with me having already a 5th civil action of the Code of Laws and now a 3rd military action from Joan of Arc, I think I can very safely skip the monarchy and just wait for an H2 government form. So I went for Joan of Arc here. I replace Hammurabi. I then go for the swordsman. I build one, I build another one. With that I make it that I'm not the weakest. I can copy the legion tactic at the next turn. I'm using a lot of military actions now in H1 instead of in H2. And yeah, I'm just not the weakest, and from the next turn on I will be able to peak with Joan of Arc, so I know how much I maybe need to prepare for potential strength events. I have 3 civil actions left, and at the end those were relatively clear to me. I will increase my population and then just take the 2 yellow cards with the Silk Road bonus. Those should be very useful. The cultural heritage potentially allowing me to already at the next turn going into an H2 government form, and the Ridgeland potentially allowing me to already the next turn go into a very early coal upgrade, both thanks to the Silk Road bonus. So I think both of them are very useful. I could maybe consider not increasing my population, taking the drama. Just not a bad drama game here. But the thing is, if there are reds revealed, I'm really screwed, because then I would have an uprising issue at the next turn, so that was something that I was not willing to risk, and then I wasn't willing to take the drama over one of those yellow cards, especially with them potentially allowing myself to go for such a big boost at the next turn. I can keep my cards in hand. Irok goes for Leonardo, goes for the monarchy, can develop the monarchy very cheaply with the Acropolis. The second copy of Alchemy has been very late, which is a bit unfortunate for him, even though of course so far he had some decent stuff to do with going for those iron upgrades. He is then willing to go for the drama, has the Acropolis, maybe he can actually go for a bit of a culture setup. Envy is going for the cartography, so he rejected the naval trade agreement pact, secures himself the cartography. It really looks like there are some colonies coming. He this turn finishes the Forbidden City, develops the cartography, which also makes him a bit stronger, especially combined with him, I think, now copying the tactic. He will be the strongest after his turn. Or he actually plays his own tactic, the fighting band, which is also nice for your colonization usage. So he is even more well equipped now, and he then develops the printing press with Gutenberg for free. It's my turn. I of course see now what is on top, and there's actually a strength event on top, maybe not the most influential one, the Crusades, but still I mean I can't push, but even if I would have been able to push, I think I definitely wouldn't, and would have made sure to get stronger here. Instead, I offered a naval trade agreement to Irok. MV has given some signs that there might be some colonies coming, and I have those colonization cards in hand. I mean, at this turn I will again use quite a bunch of my military actions, but soon I might get 3 draws, and who knows, maybe with this pact I have a chance to win at least one of those colonies, and then the Suez Canal might be an option. So I again tried offering this pact, and Irok is willing to accept. I this turn copy the Legion tactic, but I also upgrade a warrior to swordsman, putting myself at 8 strength. But I will even go for more strength. Maybe a bit of a questionable choice, but I kind of wanted to invest my actions here into something useful. I could just take reserves, maybe play cultural heritage and stuff. Maybe that could be fine. I could also start going into irrigation. However, I'm in a position where what could potentially be quite strong, with me wanting to go into coal still, and with that I think there is some benefit into not committing into irrigation too early, leaving myself open for potentially cheap selective breeding with James Watt. And at the end, I then decided to use my actions to go into warfare. Maybe a situation where the warfare is not really needed, as I have Joan of Arc. On the other hand, I want to go into the first best H2 government form that shows in a row. And if that is a republic, then now I'm not dependent on strategy, and at least it is giving me an additional strength. It's immediately giving me an additional draw. I can soon keep more cards in hand, and if I should go into republic, I'm maybe feeling a lot better than when I would be dependent on the strategy, especially with no military action leaders being there in H2. So I think it's a fine investment, even though maybe I don't need a additional military action that much, but this turn at least it is giving me immediately an additional draw. Then I have 3 civil actions left. I will play the cultural heritage with the Silk Road bonus and then take the urban growth. I could have also just taken the reserves, but I have 2 unhappy workers. I might very likely still in H2 go for a happy face solution, and then I felt like the urban growth for civil action cheaper than the reserves is just a more efficient yellow card. I can let the alchemy stay on 2 civil actions for Irok, which is nice. I draw the historic territory. E-Rock is ignoring the alchemy, which maybe is a fine choice at this point. There's actually a copy of journalism coming down the row, and with him going for St. Peter's Basilica, which frees up that worker, the journalism might actually be very usable for him at the next turn, and then gives him an even bigger bonus with Leonardo, and also the St. Peter's Basilica just allows him to invest his resources very nicely, so I think a good decision here by E-Rock. Now it's Envy's turn. He sees the Crusades are revealed, which I was happy to see because Envy will actually get stronger than me this turn, so I was happy to see that the Crusades are now already out. He will build a printing press for free with Gutenberg, takes the Rifleman for 3 civil actions. Those might be taken away, and I think for him it's very important being able to upgrade his warriors, and that actually allows him to first of all get out of corruption, and second of all be the strongest after his turn. He then takes the drama, making him also prepared for some more culture leaders. Now it's my turn. As you can see, I actually put a historic territory into the deck. Maybe a bit of a questionable decision, but on top I see the strategic territory 1, and I thought that if I reveal it at my turn, maybe I have a bit of a better chance on actually winning it. Of course, that's a bit of a swingy territory, especially later on, but I at least need the happy faces very much, so I was fine into pushing it into the strategic territory 1. I was not willing to bid more than 1 unit. Sometimes I am willing to go for 2 units for the strategic territory, especially if there is a Suez Canal in the game. But here I wasn't, because I don't have a lot of resources to work with, and also can't rebuild those units very easily, and so I only bid 5, but that's not enough. But MV at least has to pay quite a lot. As you can see, he sends 2 units away, and I was perfectly fine with that outcome. I think that's quite a big price for him to pay. With the Suez Canal in there, maybe it is worth it, but even with that, I think it's a heavy price. Of course, those draws now also might give him a strong H2 colony that he then can go for with the Suez Canal. Yeah, but definitely quite a price that he pays for that colony. This turn I can go for a government form, and I even have the choice whether I rather want to have the constitutional monarchy or the republic. And you might argue that, of course, the constitutional monarchy, with already having the code of laws, might be the more, the more balanced, more well-rounded, I'm not sure if that is the thing that you can say, government form that just gives me a lot of actions, but also prepares me nicely for my military actions. But I have already 4 military actions at the moment. I do think that with how the situation is looking at the moment, it's unlikely that I will really use my military actions in the next few turns. And then getting Republic for 1 science cheaper, and at the upcoming turns actually having additional actions. And those additional actions together with the Silk Road are worth even more. I think the Republic is just a better government form here. Of course, as soon as we are entering Age 3, I will lose at some point Joan of Arc, and I might need more military actions at this point, but I felt like the benefits that Republic will give me up to this point are just really important, and that in Age 3 I might have other solutions to gain more military actions. Military theory, maybe making a switch into fundamentalism or communism. There are options for me to get more military actions at this point, and so for now I just wanted to have as many civil actions as I can go for. I'm now at 8, which is really great. And then with my remaining civil actions, I actually go for the revolutionary idea in the reserves. A bit costly. I thought about maybe building a religion, which at least gives me an additional strength with Joan of Arc without using the urban growth or some stuff. But it just didn't feel right doing that. And also both of those yellow cards I think are quite nice, might help me accelerating my economical build-up, especially the revolutionary idea. I'm now at 6 science, which is 1 too few in order to go for the coal at the next turn, and I kind of want to be open to get into coal at the next turn, so with having the revolutionary idea I now can go into coal at the next turn. In the reserves I can use them to get some upgrades going in quicker. Of course, having corruption with only bronze mines is not great, but at least I have now a lot of civil actions. I have some yellow cards already in hand, so I felt like it is fine in this situation. I draw some cards, a Scientific Cooperation Pact, which can be interesting, as well as 2 events. E-Rock indeed will go for the journalisms. I was interested to see whether he will go into journalisms or scientific method. He goes into journalism, and I think it's a fine choice. He builds 1, is now at 6 culture income, and then takes the cavalryman. the second copy is coming down the row, so it would be a bit of a risk to not take the first copy here, especially because all of the players have skipped the knights. MV just takes the Suez Canal this turn. Interesting choice, but he has already the first colony. Who knows? There might be another colony coming, and then the Suez Canal is, of course, quite a strong government form. So, yeah, government form's quite a strong wonder. The government forms he is actually skipping in order to go for the Suez Canal already this turn, and quite a big investment, but of course you know that I value the Suez Canal quite highly as well. With none of his opponents having a colony yet, maybe there could be a case towards not taking it, but I have a lot of civil actions, so I might be able to make it be discarded before his next turn. So he just wants to really secure that wonder for himself here. He then goes, first of all, takes the scientific method with Gutenberg and also goes for an upgrade from Warriors to Rifleman, but sadly it's not enough to get him out of corruption, but it makes him the strongest. I do not see this turn. I see that the wealthy territories on top. For now, I mean, I could push those into the deck, but I wanted to try to get the scientific corporation, because then I can develop the coal this turn without having to use the revolutionary idea, and generally that having that pact could be quite strong. I was hoping that Irok might go for it, because he has a lot of cheap technologies in hand, can develop them, score resource with Leonardo, has some decent science production himself. But I have even more actions, which is also a relevant factor for that pact, because in order to go for a lot of technologies, you also need actions to do that and to use the technologies then. And maybe it was just a bit afraid that I, at the end, would gain more benefits out of this pact, which I think is fine. But I still had some hopes that he would accept. MV, I think, would definitely reject this pact. And even though I can't go for that coal now just directly and have to play the revolutionary idea, I think it's still the best thing to go for that coal. I could have considered going into Darwin and then taking the coal for cheaper, but for now I'm still somewhat happy with Joan of Arc, and Darwin is maybe fine, but there are other potentially strong leaders like Nobel, Newton, maybe still James Watt as a transitional leader at the end, even though I will now already commit to coal, could also be fine. Maybe if I go for Darwin, I could also take the selective breeding, because I will now not take it, and there's a chance that both copies might be taken away and that there's no ocean liner service, so I at least have the irrigation in hand, which maybe makes skipping the selective breeding a bit more doable, but it still could be annoying if I don't get my hands on one of those copies. Nonetheless, I at the end didn't go for Darwin. Instead, I go for the coal. And while taking the selective breeding might have been an option, there are just so many cards that could be important to take. I take the last copy of Cavalryman, the Urban Growth with the Silk Road is worth quite a lot, and the Organized Religion for Happy Face Illusion is just also a very useful card to have, and who knows, maybe I can even use it while I still have Joan of Arc for a bit of a strength boost. So at the end, this turn just felt very fine, going to coal and securing myself those cards. As you can see, I didn't use the rich land in the coal, so that I can maybe at the next turn use it with the Silk Road bonus. Keep an event, the Scientific Cooperation Pact, and draw some cards. Sadly, no colonization card. I was hoping for them, as there's a colony on top. Irok is willing to pay 3 civil actions for Newton here. Newton is just quite strong if you have either journalism or scientific method, and I can understand that he wants to secure himself, Newton here, especially because he doesn't have the most civil actions. He will go for the justice system this turn, which I sadly let fall down to 1 civil actions for him, but even with that he doesn't have the most, and being able to gain even more with Newton I think is quite a big benefit for him, so I can see that why he's willing to pay that many civil actions for him, and at least he gets 1 additional action back immediately this turn with, say, developing the justice system for free. And then he takes the selective breeding. The breakthrough, as you can see, the second copy of selective breeding has shown itself in the row. It's on 1 civil action for MV, so I thought, dang, I might miss out on the technology. MV seeds, the wealthy territory is revealed. I again was only willing to bid 1 unit. MV has to bid a 5+. And yeah, he has only Rifleman, so has to pay a heavy price for it. I'm not sure if he has a colonization card or something. If yes, then I'm not sure if upgrading this Warrior to Rifleman was a good idea with that colony coming. Maybe leaving the door open to win that cheaply could be an idea, but maybe he doesn't have a colonization card anyway and would need to pay a Rifleman anyway. And also upgrading made him the strongest, so I think it was still a fine choice. But again, sending another Rifleman away for such a colony is a heavy price. He maybe is now relatively low in population, has to destroy a lab in order to build a printing press with Gutenberg. and then rebuilds the Rifleman to be strongest again. Afterwards goes for Bach, takes the Selective Breeding, Anti-Engineering Genius. Now it's my turn. I again try offering the Scientific Cooperation Pact. I didn't have the most hope. I actually see what event is on top again, of course. The Barbarians are on top. And I maybe could also just push, but I mean, the popularization of science might end up being a nice event, but EROC might also build more journalisms, and it could be a better event. And also I thought that maybe there's a hope that either I or EROC will actually get stronger than MV, so that MV, who has the most culture at the moment, actually gets hit by the barbarians that are on top. So I will again offer the pact, but this time to MV, because I was actually afraid of EROC's ability and what he could do when he accepts the pact. I was thinking that now he might be the one getting too much benefits out of it, and because he has no Newton and he has lots of cheap technologies in hand. If he gets the pact, he can develop Masonry for 1, Swordsman for 2, Drama for 1, Selective Breeding for 3, so he could actually develop 4 technologies at a cost of 7 science, which he has available thanks to the breakthrough, and it wouldn't cost him any actions. He could just get all of those cheap technologies out, having them available for the rest of the game, and yeah, then that just felt like too much value that he could get out of this pact, so I wasn't willing to offer to him. I thought that MV likely rejects it, but I guess it's at least worth a try. I this turn can upgrade second mine with the Ridgeland bonus, with the Ridgeland with the Silk Road bonus. And now that I've missed out on both copies of Selective Breeding, I think I really wanted to go for the Statue of Liberty here. It's available relatively cheaply. I have an H2 government form, so it gives me a decent amount of culture production. It might just generally be the best wonder available for me. Harvard College, of course, also quite decent, but at the moment I might not need additional science income that much, especially because it's possible that I might just go for Nobel at the next turn. I thought about if maybe this is still worthwhile going for James Watt, but I don't get the Selective Breeding, and I don't know when the mechanized agriculture will be available, so I rather thought that maybe at the next turn I will just go for Nobel, or maybe Anthony Gaudi, but maybe Nobel, and then I have even more science, so the statue I think is just better, especially because I kinda have to maybe go into irrigation here. I actually start an upgrade already, getting that now going as quickly as possible to compensate for having maybe an inferior food solution, and now gaining the additional yellows from the Statue of Liberty to somehow make that a sufficient food solution, hopefully, for the rest of the game. I take a copy of Opera, as there's a lot of synergy for it in H3 with Chaplin, Marlene Dietrich, Fleming, and the Hollywood. So I want to have that available, and then with the remaining 2 actions I take a copy of Richland, as I thought it's maybe nice to accelerate my economic build-up even more, because I want to maybe go for finishing coal and irrigation upgrades. I want to finish the statue. I soon might need some happy faces with the organized religion, and while I have already some resource yellows in hand, I felt like the Richland, and I think I also did some calculations, in the Richland actually makes difference here, and I could alternatively maybe already develop the organized religion, play the reserves, play more civil action efficiently, but I wanted to secure myself yet another yellow card. I draw again some cards. EROC develops the Selective Breeding for 3 with Newton, goes for an upgrade, takes the strategy, takes the wave of nationalism, goes for yet another upgrade. MV this turn doesn't see it and will finish the Suez Canal. I was of course interested to see what colony he found, and it looks like he did get a bit unlucky. It looks like he didn't find an H2 colony despite having the additional draws from the strategic territory, but he had also not the most normal draws, so still a bit unfortunate, of course. He at least had this backup colony, otherwise it would have been quite a gamble to take the Suez Canal, of course, and at least he has now 3 colonies, so it's a fine Suez Canal, but he invested a lot into winning those colonies, invested a lot into taking the Suez Canal, and I'm not sure if getting that H1 colony now for free is enough of a reward to justify those big investments. He then develops the drama with Bach before he loses it to the end of the age. With all of my opponents not ceding, the event on top is still the Barbarians, and this turn I will actually go for Nobel. Joan of Arc isn't giving me any strength, so if I elect Nobel I will be stronger than Envy, and with that I didn't want to push here, as yeah, that might just cost Envy a population, and especially with having Bach, or also generally, it might just be a very annoying event for him to get hit by. The question is, how do you use my politics action now that I don't see an event? And I thought, well, maybe I just offer the scientific cooperation again, but I again didn't dare offering it to E-Rock because I won't anti-age, and he again can develop all of those cheap technologies for free with Newton. So I thought, well, I might offer it to Envy, but I thought I probably will just reject it. And then I thought, well, I have an excess military action that I won't use this turn. I can also just play the spy against E-Rock, so that he has to discard something, maybe something worthwhile. And at the end I was just too certain that the scientific operation would be rejected. Anyway, probably it has the bigger reward if it is for some reason accepted. Maybe out of fear that I offer it to E-Rock again at some point. But at the end I just went for the spy against E-Rock. Maybe making it that he has to discard something that he wanted to keep. I then will go for Nobel, replace Joan of Arc. I will go for my last mine upgrade. I take the architecture, develop the organized religion, build an organized religion using this age 1 urban growth before I lose it to the end of the age, and then I just go for another farm upgrade, which allows it that I can increase my population at the next turn. Could have also gone for one of those yellow cards, but I just rather wanted to get the production going, and thanks to the reserves I have enough resources to finish the Statue of Liberty at the next turn. So I just got a lot of stuff going, fixed my happy faces, completed my production in regards to farms and mines, and yeah, with my 8 actions I generally felt relatively happy about the position, especially because I'm also not really behind in culture. Now I again keep the Scientific Cooperation Pact, the popularization of science, economic progress, but I also draw a new pact, the International Trade Agreement. E-Rock develops the masonry for free, develops the scientific method, and goes for 2 upgrades, so he goes for some very big science income now, takes the cannons as well as increasing his population. Now age 3 starts, the Naval Trade Agreement Pact ends, and yeah, maybe that Naval Trade Agreement Pact did bite Envy a little bit. I was able to bid a little bit higher, and I mean, E-Rock was of course the one who I had a pact with, but we can now see that it was probably a good decision that Envy rejected the pact. Fortunately for him, I now with Nobel was able to get stronger, and Envy gets hit by the Barbarians now. At least he can get into 2 selective breeding upgrades this turn, which should make it that he gets the population back relatively quickly. He also takes the Republic, as he still needs a government form. Maybe he can somehow get a revolution going. Now it's my turn. I just offer the International Trade Agreement Pact here. It's just very safer that it gets accepted. At this point, I don't have that much fear of E-Rock as before, as those cheap technologies are now gone, but still he has now 10 science income, Newton, so I was a bit afraid of what he could do with the pact, and Envy very likely would reject it again, so I just went for an international trade agreement, with Envy actually giving me even more resource income. First I thought, well, I might want to go for additional food income, because that is actually my one of my weak spots. The thing is, when I now finish the Statue of Liberty, which I will also do as I think the first thing of my turn, so we can also skip to that point, I have now such a situation in the Yellow Bank that the additional food income that I would get now from the International Trade Agreement wouldn't really make a big difference. I can increase my population only once, regardless of the pact, at the next turn. Then in 2 turns I would be 10 food, now at 8, so again I can increase my population another time regardless of the pact. And then in 3 turns it maybe makes a difference. And then I, at the end, rather wanted to have the additional resources, hoping that they would make a bigger difference, especially because I was thinking that if I should get a chance to get into mechanized agriculture, I really would like to get into that mechanized agriculture, especially with the Red Cross being the game. I have only 2 wonders, I have lots of civil actions, I have the architecture. Yeah. Also, I think I wanted to take a look at the overview at the end of MV's turns. Let's still do it now. MV has a bit of a culture lead with Bach, but I think it's a challenging position. He's still in despotism. It might end up being a bit awkward for him getting into government form. If he does the revolution to republic, he still has the big issue of being stuck on 2 military actions. He has lots of resources now, especially with the pact now, also lots of food income. So there is some potential for him in this situation, but it could end up being a bit tricky. And if he gets punished for the weaknesses that he has, things could look not so great for him. But if he doesn't and is able to put the resources and food to good use and somehow get into government form, then I think he also has still quite some potential. Iraq has a very solid, or definitely a strong position. He has 10 science income with Newton, so that's definitely nothing bad. Has a fine culture income, at the moment a little bit better than mine. And with the big science income, he might also be able to upgrade his monarchy soon into an H3 government form. Has the strategy that he can maybe develop soon. The moment is behind in strength, but might be able to change that soon. Nonetheless, I was relatively happy about my position. I have 2 more actions than Iraq. Of course, Iraq has Newton. I have not as much science income, but still a very decent one. But I have now 4 additional resource production. Maybe not as much food income, but with the Statue of Liberty, it's still somewhat fine, my food situation. So I felt with the additional actions and the 10 resource income, I might like my position the most. The problem for me is that I don't have any tactic. So if one of my opponents, probably it will be Iraq, because MV at the moment can't really go for military push. If one of my opponents pushes strength, things could be a bit awkward for me, so that's definitely a weakness, and also my position is definitely not that much better that I have a very clear advantage, but I was somewhat happy about the overall position here. I finished the Statue of Liberty, which was not completely clear for me, because there's another interesting thing that I could invest into, and that would be to go for a bunch of computer upgrades. There are some synergizing leaders, there's the Manhattan Project, the space flight, there will be Nobel Prizes, so I really kind of would like to go into computers here. But if I go for a bunch of computer upgrades, I need to skip the Air Forces, which is a bit of a price to pay, especially with me not having the tactic. Maybe I don't want to give my opponents access to a copy of Air Force, which maybe increases the chance that they want to go for a military push. And maybe there's a chance that the computers will cycle to me. Iraq might go for it, especially with Newton, but maybe he has also other stuff to do, and MV probably doesn't go for it. So I was hoping that maybe I still have a chance to go for computers. If not computers, maybe I can go into mechanized agriculture. If not, I can go into opera, maybe into multimedia. There's a lot of stuff that they can invest into here, which I think is generally something that you want to achieve going into H3, that there are multiple things that could give you a very nice boost, that you hopefully have most of your stuff already fixed, and then have lots of different ways how you can just get another boost during H3. And with that, I at the end wasn't willing to commit to computers for 3 and potentially even missing out on Air Forces as a cost, so I'd rather just finish the statue, take the Air Forces, take the breakthrough, and now I make a bit of a consequential decision. Because I don't have a tactic yet, and there's the second copy of cannons. At this point, I thought about, should I take it? Maybe it's definitely safer to take it. But I also 2 copies of rockets, I thought. At the moment, it doesn't look too military heavy, the game, and at the end, especially also with having the Silk Road, I rather wanted to secure myself actually 2 more yellow cards. I first thought I might just want to increase my population after taking the reserves, but the thing is, there's a chance I might get those computers at the next turn, and there's a chance maybe mechanized agriculture could be available for me, which I also would like to go into, and then the efficient upgrade I thought has the potential to be actually quite a useful card for me, and I was also willing to take that yellow card. And those yellow cards, of course, give me some value, but we will see that it has some consequences for me that I skip those cannons here, so maybe I should have also just secured myself the copy. Now that I have the International Trade Agreement, will discard the Scientific Cooperation Pact. I actually draw 3 impacts, so that's great. Impact of Wonders isn't that great though, but the other ones, Architecture and Competition, I might be able to make good with my good resource income. Irok takes a copy of Modern Infantry, so he missed out on the Rifleman, and now maybe wants to be prepared for some more tactics. Also, he's the weakest, and that gives him a very nice way to use the Wave of Nationalism for 6 additional resources, can go for 2 upgrades, and is now the strongest instead of the weakest, so that makes sense. At least with that, he has now only 2 actions left, and he decides against taking the computers, which I was happy to see, as now those might be available for cheap for me at the next turn. Now it's Envy's turn, he grabs the cannons, making sure to have them. He decides against just going for Republic Revolution. Maybe it could be an idea to just go for that and hope that he can survive until he gets rockets, but he could of course get punished very heavily, and now he definitely looks somewhat threatening. He has already some H3 cards, he could have something like entrenchments or positional army, or maybe of course also something like fortifications or defensive army. I'm now the weakest, a bit annoying, but I still was willing to see it because I won't really get stronger this turn. I this turn wanted to go very heavily into computers. I think that just gives me a very big boost. And there's also a synergizing leader for it in the row, Sid Meier, who I will take. I think that has quite some big potential here. And yeah, with that I won't increase my military strength anyway, and with that I just wanted to start pushing some events in. And with me going now very heavily into computers, I felt the popularization of science should end up being a useful event for me. If Irok goes also even more heavily into science income, there's maybe a chance that he gets even more out of it, but I was really hoping that it will be a beneficial event for me, and it should end up giving me lots of points against Envy. And if I don't see it now, I don't really know if it will be revealed. There's a chance, if not a lot of pushing happens, that maybe it just won't end up being revealed if it's in the next event deck. So I put the popularization of science into the deck. Sadly, there's actually a strength event, maybe even seeded by Envy. He was willing to get quite a bit stronger during his last turn with going for those cannons, and he gets now rewarded by getting the foray. So you can see the red cross is actually quite early, the mechanized agricultures aren't there, and with that, as said, I will now go into computers, and I will not only upgrade those alchemies, I even will build an additional computer, because with Sid Meier those computers will be quite nice. I will, in order to build one, can use the urban growth with the Silk Road bonus. I can use the efficient upgrade that I took at a turn before. With that I get out of corruption. As you might have noticed, I used the breakthrough with the Silk Road bonus, something that I first thought I might not want to do because I might have enough science anyway, and maybe I need a resource more, but I actually would have some corruption issues. At least if I like to just take even more cards with my remaining actions, which I at the end will do, because I will go for Sid Meier, Efficient Upgrade, and the Engineering Genius. I again wanted to secure myself even more yellow cards. Of course, you might argue I don't really need those, but the Efficient Upgrade I can use immediately, in the Engineering Genius I kind of also really want to use, because I certainly want to go for Wonder, and it has the potential to give me at least 4, depending on what Wonder I get, but even more resources, and that for 1 civil action. Often in H3 you are willing to take reserves for 2 or even 3 civil actions, and getting now even more resources for fewer civil actions is still quite valuable if you think that you will end up using that card very likely. Of course, those reserves in H3 have the big importance that they allow you to build more military, and having a bunch of them in hand allows you to threaten a lot more military without necessarily needing to build it. So that's of course a factor, and you can't really just look at efficiency in H3, but nonetheless I kind of wanted to have both of those cards. Maybe it could have been fine to increase my population and then wait with using the Silk Road bonus and the breakthrough. Maybe I could have skipped on one of those, but in the end I wanted to have them all and was willing to not increase my population yet. And yeah, I then draw some cards. As you can see, there's the first copy of rockets. I took a lot of cards. Maybe I should have skipped one, because now the chance increases that the rockets could just be discarded before my next turn, but I still have attack, don't have a tactic for them. There's still a second copy. Maybe I, because of that reason, should have actually skipped one of those yellow cards. And I think I also thought about it, but still at the end decided to go for both of them. And I was a little bit worried, because Irok first of all makes it actually that the rockets will be discarded, but not only that, he also starts building a cannon using the patriotism, getting strongest again, make sure that he gets some draws as the strategy in hand, will not get the communism, and if he has a fine tactic, he has the potential to soon actually go for a bit of a military push. The rockets will now be discarded, and I felt a little bit vulnerable and thought, well, maybe I should have taken the cannons earlier on. Maybe I should have just taken the rockets at the turn before, or at least skipped one of those yellow cards so that the rockets aren't just discarded. MV actually goes for another rifleman, again making sure that he is the strongest. He has seeded at least one of those events, I think maybe even both of them. I think I have not seeded an H1 event, so both of them are from MV. And him building another unit might be to get out of corruption, but might also, or actually has corruption, it might be to be prepared for potential strength event. But I'm in a position where I think I need to try to get an impact in every turn, as my civilization might reward quite a bunch of impacts at the end, so I was nonetheless willing to push the impact of architecture, but the event it is revealed is actually hurtful for me, because the border conflict is revealed, and I don't have any HA things left that I can destroy, so at the end I will actually destroy an irrigation farm, and I won't rebuild it immediately, I don't have the time for that. It actually is also in some sense positive, because I can reroute the population immediately, which is in some sense useful, but nonetheless I was quite a bit annoyed to get hit by that event. And this turn I will take the rockets for 3, but it does come at a cost, because there is a card in the row that I really would like to take, the spaceflight. With my big science income, the spaceflight should end up being very big for me, and it's also a very big wonder for E-Rock. However, it's not that easily possible to take both spaceflight and rockets. It's possible, but there is also other stuff that I kind of want to do, going for the last computer upgrade, electing Sid Meier, and also I thought about the modern infantry. It's actually last copy, so I also thought about not taking rockets, but instead modern infantry. I just felt like I this turn will be a bit concerned about making sure that the modern infantry hopefully at least doesn't land at a discard spot. And then I felt like the rockets might be more likely hate drafted than the modern infantry, because if I don't have rockets, I'm very much limited to only a few tactics. If I have the rockets and miss out on modern infantry, I can at least still go for something like mechanized army. I can go for an outdated modern army tactic. Maybe I could still have an H2 tactic like Napoleonic army and different things. So I felt like the rockets are more likely to be hate drafted, and at the end I didn't want to take the risk here. My first instinct was again to take the risk, but the thing is there are air forces coming down the road. If E-Rock has drawn the right, or from my perspective, wrong cards, he might soon be able to go for a lot of strength if he has the right cards, and I need to be able to threaten some strength in that scenario. I don't need to build it, I maybe don't necessarily need a tactic, but I need to be able to threaten it, and at the end I thought I can't allow myself to miss out on the rockets. I thought about taking both rockets and spaceflight, maybe it's somehow possible, but I also really want to have the patriotism here, giving me more resource for the military, and especially with the Silk Road 2 additional military actions, which also helps me threatening more strength, because having few military actions also really limits the amount of military strength that you can just threaten. And at the end I just didn't find a solution of going now for nice turn with taking both rockets and spaceflight. I mean, it would be somehow possible, maybe now developing rockets, building one, accepting corruption, taking patriotism, taking spaceflight. But I would have corruption, I would miss out on a bunch of culture with not electing Sid Meier, I would miss out on some value with not upgrading the computers. And while the spaceflight would probably be the best wonder for me, there is still the Manhattan Project, and there's also the Empire State Building, which I actually might be able to make work very decently. So at the end, even though I didn't like it at all to give the spaceflight to E-Rock, I was rather willing to give up on that than on the rockets here, and yeah, that might be a consequence of me not having taken cannons earlier on. I developed the rockets, I built one, I increased my population, I upgrade one lab for free, I take the patriotism, and then I elect Sid Meier. I don't build another rocket for now, staying the weakest for now, which I could get punished for, but I rather wanted to maximize my draws, hoping that I might actually draw an actual tactic. And while when I stay weaker, maybe the military build-up could also be an alternative to the patriotism, I do think the additional military actions are just extremely important. And also, if I take the military build-up, then again, maybe it's more likely that the modern infantry is discarded for my next turn, and I might have a decent amount of resource anyway, so even though the military build-up is quite strong. I at the end decided to skip it here. I draw 2 cards. I was happy about it because I have a decent impact, the impact of industry. Iraq this turn with the help of the Acropolis develops the communism, takes the second copy of Air Forces. He has enough science to develop it at the next turn, so I have to be a bit careful. He takes the space flight, the military buildup, goes for an upgrade, takes the endowment and increases his population to get out of corruption. Now it's Envy's turn. He increases his population twice. He has taken the democracy at the last turn for very expensive, but isn't willing to do revolution, which I think makes sense because now he gets a revolutionary idea for only 1 civil action, and maybe finally at the next turn he will be able to get out of despotism. Now it's my turn. I have again drawn a decent impact, so I was willing to push it into the deck, hoping that there won't be another strength event. And luckily there isn't, the good harvest, but now the border conflict of course hurts even more. I lost the farm, and it cost me immediately more food, so the other order would have been maybe better for me, but that's of course something that happens when you are the weakest. And my opponents gain a lot of food, at least the red cross is already out, which I was now glad about. And this turn I think I have to go for the military theory. Iraq is still threatening a bit of strength here with having air forces and some military actions, and yeah, I think the military theory is just a must here. I will develop it. I will also take and develop the modern infantry, being prepared for a lot more tactics now, scoring a Nobel Prize, going for some upgrades helps me getting out of corruption, but in order to get out of corruption, I will go for 1 upgrade and then build a rocket actually, which also makes me the strongest for now. I will make sure to draw 3 cards, and with the remaining actions I will just go for the Empire State Building and the reserves. So this turn felt relatively clear, or relatively clean. The Empire State Building, I hopefully will be able to at least win 3 categories, maybe even 4. Maybe if my opponents really play against me, I might also only be able to reach 2, but I thought I should be able to make that decently strong. And I also can actually maybe even use the engineering genius with the Silk Road bonus on it. I guess I have a lot of other yellow cards, so it might be unlikely, but yeah, still I can get at least 5 value out of that card with other wonders. That's not that easily possible. So I at the end felt like that should be a good turn. I draw some cards, still no tactics, so I was still a bit worried that maybe I could get somehow punished by the military, even though now that I have both rockets, modern infantry, I felt a lot safer, and I felt like now I should be able to just threaten enough strength so that I don't get hit by any by something, only if maybe Iraq has actually knowledge about both entrenchments, modern army, positional army, about all of those copies, then maybe things could get dangerous. I draw an impact of technology. I was happy about it because I can make that quite strong, especially against Envy. Iraq seeds and opens the popularization of science. As you can see, I gain the most out of that. He will this turn go for Fleming, develops 2 movies for 3 with Newton, elects Fleming, builds a movie, gets a lot of culture income out of him, will be able to look at the military cards from the next turn on, takes the urban growth, the revolutionary idea, plays the reserves, and then takes the patriotism. Is interestingly willing to take corruption here in order to do all of that stuff. Now it's Envy's turn, and I was very happy to see that he actually offers me the international tourism. It's relatively late in the game, but it's still he won't end the game this turn. I'm not sure if that would even be possible for him, but he doesn't do it, and with that will net me 6 additional culture against Iraq, which could be very relevant. Envy this turn goes for Marlene, plays the revolutionary idea, goes for the democracy, increases his population twice, takes the multimedia, the revolutionary idea, so that he can develop that at the next turn, go for even more culture income, but also goes for lots of culture income, even 20, with going for all of those theaters, the democracy, and he also reveals the defensive army tactic. So now it's definitely understandable that he really wanted to secure himself the copy of cannons earlier on, and is now actually the strongest with Marlene, and is also 20 culture income, soon to be even more if he goes for the multimedia. Now it's my turn. I put the impact of technology into the deck. The inhabited territory is revealed. I wasn't willing to bid too much on that, as I have enough. I could somehow use the population probably, but I need a lot of resources for all of the stuff that I want to do. Iraq is able to win it. At least he has to send a cannon away. I this turn increase my population, go for the civil service, go for the opera, scoring a Nobel Prize, securing myself here an option of going for more culture income. I actually build an opera already this turn, going up to 20 culture income. Taking the professional sports, with professional sports and air forces, I've just the amount of science to go for those two technologies to score another Nobel Prize at the next turn, and the air forces going for them plus the defensive army tactic. I mean, I could also go for another modern infantry in the defensive army tactic, but maybe it could help me gaining enough strength to get the strength category of the Empire State Building in case my opponents go for a bit more strength. But mainly I took it for the Nobel Prize, and of course for the impact of technology that I've just put into the deck. And then I take the reserves and actually play my H2 reserves for food with the Silk Road bonus so that I can increase my population one more time at the next turn. I will have actually need to spend 5 food at the next turn, and then I will go into -1 consumption. But thanks to the Silk Road bonus, that won't cause any famine. And I was happy about my draw because I draw the positional army tactic, maybe making it a lot more easily possible to increase my strength by a lot. And the impact of strength, where we'll have to see if I'm able to seed it, especially because Erok with Flaming will now take a look at my hand and sees the impact of strength. He also uses the military buildup, goes for the military theory, the tanks, the professional sports, builds a lab, at the next turn can go for Nobel Prize and develop 2 more technologies for the spaceflight. Actually, can develop the tanks this turn and still go for 2 more technologies at the next turn, getting a Nobel Prize and scoring some points for the spaceflight. And he also will reveal his copy of Modern Army Tactic this turn, so that he is at 37 strength, making it a bit more challenging for me to overtake him in strength and gain the strength category for the Empire State Building. MV Seeds, my historic territory that I seeded a very long time ago, is now revealed. And sadly I'm not able to win it. Erok wins it. I was willing to bid a little bit for it, 2 units, but a swordsman and a modern infantry. But it could just disrupt me at the end too much here, and at the end, sadly, Erok is able to win it for somewhat cheap price. At least he is now, again, not lost some strength. And we will go for the Manhattan Project. I was worried that he might just finish it, which would make it a bit costly for me to win the strength category. It wouldn't still be possible, but we will see during my turn that there is some benefit in not having to go for that much strength, even though that benefit might not be as important as Envy would finish it, because then he probably doesn't go for those upgrades, and that makes it now more difficult for me to win the culture production category for the Empire State Building. So we are going into the last turn. Envy will still get his production, so he is definitely in the running culture-wise. His problem is that his wonder is definitely a lot worse than the wonder that I and Erok have. And I have a bit of a lead, so I generally felt good about the position. I have also some decent impacts, but there are also some impacts that I'm bad in, and Erok's spaceflight will be quite big. So I was also still a bit worried, but overall felt like I have decent chances to win here. And this turn, I needed to think whether I want to put the impact of strength into the deck. While Erok has knowledge about it, he also can't really do that much about it, because he has only the patriotism. The other resource he will need for the space flight. He can develop the military theory, of course, but he can't really do that much. And if I go for an air force and reveal this tactic, I can go for a lot of strength and could put it into the deck. However, I decided against pushing and instead go for the democracy, which is a bit of a cost. Going for the democracy, of course, gives me actually 4 culture income thanks to the Statue of Liberty, but it also costs me a Nobel Prize, which is already worth 4 culture, and another 4 points for the impact of technology. It might help for other impacts like government and progress, though. And so I'm not totally sure if I made the right call. The democracy will help me winning the culture category, and it's basically the only way to gain 4 categories, I think. Doing it with the democracy. And then that is of course quite some culture, but I could maybe also just get a culture by seeding the impact of strength into the deck, and then gaining only 3 cultures from the Empire State Building and building an air force. And with that, despite Envy maybe being able to finish the Manhattan Project, I would still be able to win the impact of strength. And maybe I should actually do it, Problem is, there could be impact of technology revealed, and if my plan is to score Nobel Prize and go for those 2 techs, it could be quite annoying to see that impact revealed. And yeah, but I think I maybe dismissed the option of seeding impact of strength a bit too quickly and just was too quickly just fine about winning 4 categories with democracy. I still think it's a very solid line, but yeah, the impact of strength play maybe also could have been worth more consideration. I go for the democracy. That's not enough yet to win the culture category, but if I build an opera and also with that gain even more culture income, I now win it. I play the reserves first with the Silk Road bonus and then the patriotism, because I need only 4 resources for the military anyway. I will upgrade only 1 swordsman to modern infantry. I can now reveal the positional army tactic. Having drawn the tactic is actually now quite relevant. It allows me to already go up to 39 strength. It allows me to disband a unit of swordsmen, and then I will actually build a coal, which makes it that I win the resource production category. And because of losing the pact, I actually was tied now with envy, and now I can make sure to win that. I actually build a coal mine instead of just a bronze, because I can't really do a lot else anyway if I spare those resources. And there's still the impact of industry in the deck, so it also gives me just some additional points. And then I have just enough resource left to play the reserves, and with the engineering genius finish the Empire State Building for 32 points. So it turned out to be quite a decent wonder, even though of course I had to do a little bit of stuff to play around it. Then it's Irok's turn. He seeds, opens the impact of architecture. I was hoping that impact of technology might be on top, because that would cost him 8 culture, but instead the impact of architecture is on top, which sadly doesn't cost him any culture, as he doesn't have any resource to improve his culture income anyway. He goes for 2 more technologies, scores Nobel Prize, plays the endowment for 3 culture, plays the patriotism, finishes the space flight for 30 points, increases his population and builds a warrior. And with that, he improves his impact of harmony instead of maybe increasing his impact of improving his impact of population anymore. But the impact of harmony, of course, gives more points. Envy seeds, the impact of industry is revealed, which is quite a good one for me actually. He then increases his population, builds a religion for impact of variety and just some culture income, finishes the Manhattan Project for 7 points, is also the strongest now. And before the final impacts, we can see that I have a somewhat comfortable lead. I also felt somewhat comfortable. 25 points in front of Irok. MV is actually closer to Irok, as Irok is close to me, but still he might have some weak impacts. So let's see if he has maybe the possibility to make a comeback here. And while I felt comfortable, you might remember the first 3-player game where I had a very strong economy, but I had bad farms and then got punished by both impact of agriculture and balance. So that was something that I was a bit afraid of, that maybe those impacts could really hurt me again. And my impacts actually that are left in the deck are also not that big against Irok, so I was still a little bit worried, but overall felt somewhat comfortable. But the first impact is the impact of agriculture, which brings Irok immediately quite a bit closer to me. There's the impact of government. There the democracy actually gave me an additional point, but still it gives Irok the same amount of points. Then there's the impact of technology from me, but with me going for the democracy, Irok will now gain the same amount. So basically same as the impact of government, we both gain 24 points. MV falls quite behind with the impact of tech. There's the impact of happiness, which brings Irok closer again. He is now 11 points behind me with a good impact. There might be something possible, but I still have an 11 points lead. And the last impact is the impact of balance. I only gained +4, so Irok gets closer again, but luckily for me it's not enough, and he only ends up 3 points behind me. But that got quite a bit close, so I was very nervous before that last impact. But luckily for me, it is enough to win the game. Also, now probably thanks to that International Tourism Pact, so I got quite lucky that MV offered that to me and not to Irok. Yeah, those points likely have now made the difference. And yeah, so that was quite close. closer than I would have liked, because I generally was happy about my position, my strong economy, which I maybe also was able to develop thanks to going for the Silk Road. Um, that decision, of course, was an important one early on. I'm still not sure if it was the correct one, but such a big economy, the Silk Road definitely plays a part in being able to go for such a thing. And yeah, I had a strong position, but without having a tactic and with not having artillery technology, I was a bit vulnerable. And because of that, had to sacrifice the space flight. Maybe I could have also let it be in the row, but didn't find a good way to do that. Or to take it, but didn't find a good way to do that. And with that, I need to leave it to Erok, which allowed him to go for a very big wonder. Otherwise, maybe he wouldn't have gotten as big of a wonder. The space flight maybe wouldn't have given me even more points. I didn't do the count, but I think I have a lot of technologies. And yeah, so at the end, things got quite close. I again got punished by both Impact of Balance and Agriculture with being weak on farms, so that's of course something that you ideally should avoid. This time I didn't even have the Ocean Liner service, which was the explanation for those weeks impact the last time, but this time I lost my farm because of a border conflict. And yeah, so an interesting game. MB put himself into a bit of a tough spot with maybe paying big prices for colonies and the Suez Canal and not getting the biggest reward out of it, and then not finding a good way to get into a government form. So that was a tricky situation for him that at the end, maybe it was just too tricky and too difficult to pull off. Erok had a very nice game with Newton, just played completely solid, put some pressure on me with those. I'm not even sure how much that was intentional, but it might definitely be, and it certainly had an effect on me with not going for the space flight. And he went for a lot of culture income, had those very decent impacts for him at the end. I, of course, also had some nice impact draws, so I can't complain, and also got offered the international tourism, so it was quite close. I'm very lucky and also, of course, very happy being able to win this one. It easily could have gone the other way, and as you know, with having the standings in mind, it was quite important whether I would win this game or Erok. And talking about the standings, I think we can take a look at those now. And at the point when this 3-player game got finished, there finished also already the first 2-player game between my opponents, and MV, while he lost this game without that is now out of contention of winning the group, still did a good performance in the 2-player game against Erok and was able to win that. And with now the latest 3-player game and now MV winning the 2-player game against Erok, things are looking now quite comfortable for me in the standings, but it is not done yet. Erok has one game left, the game against me. So if I lose my two-player games that I have now against Erok and MV, I will not win the group. But if I just win one single game, then I'm able to advance into the upper bracket of the next stage. So I have now a good position thanks to that win in the 3-player game and thanks to MV pulling off a nice win in the 2-player game against Erok. But those are some tough opponents. So yeah, that's of course easier said than done, winning a game. But we will see in the next video if I maybe already will be able to win one of the 2-player games. Alright, and with that we are at the end of the video. I hope it was an interesting game for you. I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.